The night I caught that unfamiliar scent on his shirt, I didn't shout. I listened because paper remembers what anger forgets. The door clicked soft, the way guilt learns to walk. He kissed my cheek too fast and moved past me like a man late for his own alibi. I hugged him anyway, and that's when I smelled it. Not my perfume, not our detergent, something sweet and borrowed. A note that didn't belong in my house. I didn't demand an explanation. I set his shirt aside as if it were a fragile witness. In the laundry room, steam rose and truth didn't. I washed the collar twice. The scent held on like a rumor that knows it's right. His phone lit the counter. A preview I wasn't supposed to see. Dad, are you still coming? We don't have a child who calls him that. I stared at the words until they rearranged themselves into the shape of a question I wasn't ready to ask. At dinner, he said the meeting ran long. His fork clinked the plate and never quite found rest. I smiled, the kind of smile women wear when they are cataloging. After dishes, I tidied the dresser and found a thin slip of paper hiding by the cufflinks. 2 cocktails, a hotel bar, a time that didn't match the meeting he claimed. The logo at the top stared back at me, smug. I didn't chase him with accusations. I followed the paper. In a cheap manila folder, I placed a receipt, a photo of the email preview, and a sticky note with the time he came home. My hands shook. My handwriting didn't. Paper is patient. Paper is precise. Paper will sit there and keep its story straight even when your heart forgets how. He showered longer than usual, twice, like he was trying to rinse off a different life. When he came to bed, he smelled like soap and a decision he hadn't made yet. I lay awake practicing breathing the way firefighters do. Slow, measured, useful. The next morning I found another breadcrumb. A small travel-size item tucked in a drawer we never share, brand unfamiliar. Not mine. Stranger in my house. Shaped like a tube. I noted it in the log I'd started on the back of an old church bulletin. I listened to my own pulse and waited for it to stop arguing with the facts. I tried on a dozen futures. The screaming one, the crying one, the begging one. None of them fit. I made coffee instead and watched light crawl across the kitchen like a brave child. In the quiet, I remembered something my mother taught me. If you want the truth to stand up, give it a chair. I pulled one out and set the folder on it. At lunch, I walked 3 blocks past the florist and the shoe repair to a narrow office above a bakery. The door had a frosted pane and a bell that sounded like a secret being careful. Inside, a man with a neat tie and the kind of silence that doesn't waste words looked up. I need clarity, I said, because revenge was too small a word for what I was after. He slid a card across the desk, licensed investigator, and a legal pad across the other way. I opened my folder. I placed the receipt, the photo, the note about the scent, the brand I'd found. I told him about the email subject line that wasn't meant for me. He didn't flinch. He only asked for dates, times, places, and permission to track what was public and lawful. I signed my name without hurrying. He said, "Give me 3 days. Back home I bake bread. Because dough rises when you treat it right." I cleaned the counter, watered the violets, and learned my house again, room by room, as if I were preparing it to hear bad news without falling apart. That night, he promised, voice like a newsreader who knows the story isn't good. "Your husband's routine changed," he said. Second phone, different bag. He thinks he's invisible. I thanked him and wrote down every word. When I prayed, I didn't ask for thunder. I asked for light, just enough to see the next step without tripping over the last one. I slept a little, pages stacking, edges aligning, a spine forming where there had only been loose sheets. In the morning, I opened the folder and smoothed the corners like a mother fixes a collar before sending a child out the door. "Stand up," I told it. "We have work to do." If this hits home, tap subscribe. New true stories daily. Comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. On the second, promise, the phone rang again. "You should sit down," the investigator said. "I have photos and a hotel name you're going to recognize. If the hook grabbed you, like plus subscribe. Your super thanks keeps these daily stories alive." I didn't hire a detective for revenge. I hired him for clarity. The office was a narrow room above a bakery, the kind where the bell on the door sounds like a secret clearing its throat. The glass on the door was frosted. His tie was sensible, and the silence he kept was the kind that saves time. I set my manila folder on his desk like a small, beating animal and opened it. The receipt from the hotel bar. A photo of the email subject line I wasn't meant to see. A neat note about the unfamiliar scent that clung to his shirt long after steam did its best. One more line in my own hand. The little tube I found in a drawer we never share. He didn't gasp or frown. He made a column for dates, another for places, and asked a kind of questions that pinned butterflies without breaking wings. Where did he say he was? What time did he return? Who could place him elsewhere? I answered, and as I did, I felt my heartbeat slow to the metronome of a pencil scratching paper. He slid a card across the desk, licensed investigator, and a consent form across the other way. Public places only. What is lawful? Nothing more, he said. I signed with a hand that trembled and a line that did not. Give me 3 days. At home. 3 days felt like wet rope. I needed something to hold, so I baked bread. Flour on my counter. Warmth. Bowl. Patience in the rise. Dough is honest. It tells you what kind of care you gave it. I wiped the counters twice, watered the violets, walked the rooms the way you walk a fence line after a storm. If the truth was coming, the house should be steady enough to hear it. That evening he called anyway. Your husband's routine changed today, he said, voice trimmed of drama. A second phone. Different gym bag. He parked 2 blocks away from his own office. He thinks shadows make him invisible. I wrote it down in the log I had started on the back of an old church bulletin. Time, location, behavior, facts that could stack without wobbling. When I hung up, I didn't pace. I put my pen in the folder and the folder back on its chair. If you want truth to stand up, give it furniture. He came home late, smelling like the kind of cologne you wear when you want to be noticed by someone who doesn't live with you. I asked him about his day the way a nurse asks about pain, location, intensity, duration. He smiled too much and said too little. I smiled too little and said even less. When he showered, I stood in the hallway and practiced breathing from my belly, slow and useful, the way firefighters are trained to make one tank last. Morning broke thin and gray. I added small things to the log. A run to the dry cleaner for shirts I didn't remember meeting. A charge at a cafe across town he has no reason to love. A text he shielded with his palm and answered in the garage. I refused to turn the log into a diary of my hurt. Dates, times, places. Paper remembers what anger forgets. Midday, I walked the neighborhood and made a note of which porches hold people at p.m., who waters plants at 6, which windows glow before sunset. Not because I wanted an audience, because light is its own witness and it prefers to have company. At the pharmacy I bought a fireproof box and 2 USB drives. One for now, one for later. I labeled folders with names that would make sense to a future me who might be tired. Hotel, timeline, messages, receipts. I did not open the old photos in my phone where he is young and I am laughing. Memory is not evidence. It can sit in its drawer until called. On the second day he called from a car, turn signal clicking somewhere near the microphone. He's changed his routine again, the investigator said. Lunch on the other side of, paused in a parking lot and checked the rearview mirror for a full minute. A pause. Do you want me to continue? Want is a small word for a choice that big. Yes, I said, but be careful with me. Bring me what has edges. Leave the guesswork where it belongs. That night I folded laundry I didn't remember washing and lined up socks in pairs as if order could be contagious. I wrote one sentence on a sticky note and put it inside the folder. I wasn't going to swing it in every direction and call that justice. I slept a little. The sky opened briefly and shut again. In the morning he kissed my forehead like a man rehearsing an alibi he plans to forget. I poured coffee in silence and watched the steam make halos above the cup. When he left, I stood at the window long enough to see his taillights disappear. I didn't cry. If I started, I was afraid I'd be rinsed empty, and I needed enough of myself left to hold a pen. The phone rang before noon. The investigator's voice had softened by a single degree. You should sit down, he said. We have photographs, timestamps. He isn't alone. I sat in my husband's old chair and let the wood answer for my spine. Where? I asked. Paper can tell a story, but place writes the headline. He told me the hotel name, the pretty one with the lobby like a magazine spread, the place where our son took his first official anniversary dinner because he wanted to treat his wife to something he couldn't quite afford. For a moment I tasted metal. Then I set my jaw. There's more, he said, careful. A video from a balcony. It's not ambiguous. I looked at the violets on the sill. One leaf was new and shy about it. Bring everything, I said, but bring it like a doctor. Just the facts, no adjectives. I can be there in an hour. I hung up and opened the fireproof box. I cleared a space on the table where invoices once lived and school forms were signed. I laid out sleeves and labels. empty and ready. In the quiet, I whispered a small prayer that had nothing to do with their ruin and everything to do with my footing. Let my hands be steady. Let my mouth be clean. Let the truth do its own work. When the knock came, I didn't startle. I stood, smoothed the corner of the folder without knowing why, and opened the door to a man, holding an envelope thick enough to change the air. He set the envelope on my table like a brick wrapped in paper. I could hear the weight of it before I touched it. Inside, everything was tidy and undeniable. A cover sheet with dates and addresses, thumbnails arranged in 2 neat rows, a list of times precise enough to pin shadows to the floor. The first photo was the hotel lobby, the one with the marble that always looks damp, the flower arrangement taller than a child, the kind of lighting that flatters lies. He's there, shoulders relaxed the way they never are at home. A second frame, his hand at the small of a woman's back, gentle, practiced. Third, doors sliding shut on the elevator, his face turned toward her, hers mostly hidden by hair. I made myself breathe to the count of 4 in, 4 out. When I reached a fourth photo, she turned just enough, a profile, then an eye, then a mouth I knew from birthday dinners and tired Sundays and the day she took my son's last name like it was something fragile to carry. My daughter-in-law. I didn't cry. I read. Timestamps told me what hope refused to. This wasn't one mistake swimming in excuses. This was a calendar. The investigator didn't speak until I looked up. "We can stop here," he said, voice respectful. "You have enough to make choices. Enough." The word rang like cutlery on a plate. I nodded once and pulled the plastic sleeves toward me. The printer hummed. Paper cooled in my hands. I labeled each page with the steadiness you use for prescriptions and recipes. Hotel lobby, hotel elevator, hotel arrival, hotel exit. I slid everything into the fireproof box with the clean finality of a drawer closing. He cleared his throat. "There's also video," he said carefully. "Balcony. It's not suggestive. It's clear." The room tilted, but the table didn't. I put my palms flat on the wood and pressed until I remembered where the floor was. "Archive it," I said. "Bring it to me, ready to name what I see." He nodded and left me with the envelope and a silence that did not demand anything from me. I carried the photos to the window where the light is kind. The violets were throwing new leaves that hadn't been there last week. "Of course it's her," I said out loud to no one. Betrayal is efficient. It never travels far to find its target. For a minute I let myself think of my son's shifts that stole his sleep, the careful way he folds laundry, the anniversary dinner at the same hotel because he wanted her to feel celebrated and he wanted to see himself as the kind of man who could afford it. I tasted metal, swallowed air, and set the thought down. I was not going to use his love as fuel for my rage. He deserved more care than that. Truth without care. Another hammer. On the back of an old electric bill I drew a timeline. First suspicion, the scent. First paper, the receipt. Email subject line, day and time. The drawer and the little tube that wasn't mine. The hotel frames. I drew a thin line through the middle and wrote 2 words above it. I stay. Not in the marriage, in myself. By evening, I had learned something about grief I didn't know before. It can be organized. I made 2 USB copies and labeled them with dates. I made a list of people whose words would be steady if ever asked. The neighbor who waters at 6, the pharmacist who saw me by the fireproof box, the church friend who hugged me too long last Sunday. I wasn't building an army. I was building a record. He came home smiling like a man who thinks he is getting away with it. I set a plate on the table. The fork made the same sound it always makes. Small mercy. How the ordinary refuses to clap for the extraordinary. He told a story about traffic. I told one about the grocery line. My voice did not shake. I did not perform surprise when his phone buzzed and he set it face down. I didn't need to read the screen. I had already read the day. When he showered, I took the folder from the chair and added today's date to the log. The pen left a steady line. I tucked the photos behind their labels and closed the box. Inside the bathroom, the water thundered. Inside me, the water ran calm. Later, in bed, he reached for me with a care he hadn't earned. I turned on my side and let my breathing answer for me. He rolled away. The wall forgave by being a wall. In the morning, I ironed a blouse I hadn't worn in months and walked to the bank to rent a small safe deposit box. The clerk was young and kind and did not ask what I would store. Paper went in. Keys went into separate pockets. I checked my reflection in the glass of the exit door and saw a woman who looked like my mother when decisions were heavy and hands were sure. Back home, I made tea and stood in the kitchen where the air knows all my recipes. I looked at the pan, at the stove, at the clean line of the counter, and I knew I would not be throwing a scene or packing a bag or begging a confession he would only resent. I would be setting a table for the truth, quietly, thoroughly, so that when it sat down, there would be a chair that fit. I called the investigator. "Thank you," I said. "That's enough. Bring the video tomorrow. I'll decide when to watch it." He offered a name of a lawyer if you want to talk options. I wrote it down and didn't call. Not yet. First, I would let the facts breathe. People rush to outrun humiliation and end up tripping over it. I was going to walk. That night I took out a clean card and wrote a single sentence I could live by. Pain can be data if you refuse to drink it. I taped it inside the fireproof box. Before bed, I stood at the window where our son once pressed his face to watch for the ice cream truck, and I practiced what I would say to him when the time came. Only the parts he needed. Only when he was standing on ground sturdy enough to hold it. I didn't pray for revenge. I prayed for good. Recognizes truth when it finally speaks plainly. When sleep came, it wasn't kind or unkind. It was useful, and for now, useful was enough. In the morning, the envelope was just paper again. My hands were steady. The house was steady. I was steady. The doorbell rang at noon. The investigator stood there with a small drive that could make Hope sit down and be quiet. Some truths whisper, some play on loop. He brought the drive in a small padded envelope, the kind that makes its own hush when you tear it open. I signed a receipt with a pen that didn't scratch and placed the envelope on the table like a visitor I wasn't sure I wanted to entertain. He asked if I wanted him to stay. I said no, some things you watch with no one to witness you. I boiled water, because hens like to be useful when the heart is not. The kettle sang, the cup warmed my fingers, and I carried both to the desk. The screen woke with a square of light that made the room look like it had been holding its breath for years. A folder, a date, a file named plainly nothing coy, nothing cruel. I clicked. At first there was wind, balcony rail, a slice of city, the kind of gold evenings pour over buildings when they are feeling generous. Then movement. Two figures stepping into frame, close enough that the space between them had a temperature. He leaned as if the air had given him permission. She tilted as if she'd been waiting for that particular gravity all day. He touched her wrist. Familiarity is a language. I was fluent. She laughed, a small flash of her teeth, a sound I had once heard at my table over the kind of jokes we make when we are not yet tired. I paused and told myself to breathe. 4 counts in, 4 out. I pressed play again. Glasses appeared stemware. A slow sip, the way people drink when they're not thirsty. He said something I couldn't hear. She answered with her mouth rather than her voice. Her hand went to the back of his neck like it had been there before. The camera did not flinch. It did not offer me an angle I could redeem with doubt. It offered me clarity, and clarity can be a blade. He wore the shirt I ironed on Sundays. She wore a robe from the hotel closet, soft and borrowed, sleeves too long. She turned her head just enough for me to see the ring my son worked double shifts to buy. I thought I would stand up, or yell, or break some cinematic gesture. Instead, I set the cup down very carefully and let the heat leave it. I watched the whole thing, not because I enjoy pain, because I wanted to have edges I can put in a box. They crossed a small distance between them and the balcony rail, and the city kept shining like nothing private was happening 6 stories up. When I reached the end, the video looped, starting again as if time could be persuaded to rewind. I stopped it. Rewinding does not heal. Naming does. I labeled the file with the date and the word I didn't want but needed. Undeniable. I copied it to 2 drives, the way you do with photographs you can't afford to lose, and I slid one into the fireproof box, one into my purse. Paper remembers, so do circuits. Let them do the work. When bodies are tired. I didn't call him. I didn't call her. I didn't call my son, who was probably standing in a different kind of heat, counting minutes until the bell let him rest. I stood at the sink and rinsed the cup, then set it upside down to dry. Ordinary tasks are a mercy. They don't ask your heart for permission. At the window, the violets looked like they were listening. All right, I said. Not to the plants, but to the version of myself that thought love alone keeps storms away. Now we act, not react. I took a legal pad and drew a straight line from left to right. On the left I wrote the first night, the scent that did not belong to my life. Next, the receipt and the cufflinks. Next, The email preview that had called him dad in a voice that wasn't ours. Lobby photo, elevator photo, balcony video. Beneath the line, I wrote the rules I would keep so I didn't lose myself while I was losing them. No yelling, no guessing, no telling my son until he can hear without drowning. Protect the record, protect the house, protect my spine. My phone lit with his name and then went dark. He was on his way home, or he wasn't. He was telling a story to someone, or to himself. I ignored the reflex that wanted to scan his location and instead checked the locks, watered the plants, and opened the porch light for no one in particular. Not everything is about them. Sometimes a porch light is just kindness to the night. I sat back down and watched the first 30 seconds again, not the parts that undid me, but the beginning. The way he looked left before stepping outside, as if secrecy could be improved by scanning for it. The way she fixed her hair and then stopped, knowing who was looking. People tell you who they are when they think no one is grading them. I was done grading. I was recording. When the key turned in my front door later, the house gave its familiar click that means here we go. He came in with the smell of a restaurant that lived on our side of town and kissed the air beside my cheek. I asked if he'd eaten. He lied with the ease of a man who thinks truth is a soft thing you can press your thumb into. I didn't interrogate him. I turned off the lamp and said I was tired. I was, but not of what he thought. In bed, I stared at the ceiling and did the arithmetic of decency. There are moments you can't give back. Once you take them, you can't unring sirens. You can't unteach the eye. I was going to break the news to my son, but I would not do it with theater or smoke. I would do it with a table and a folder and words that fit the size of the facts. At dawn, I printed still frames not to gloat, not to pin them like butterflies, but because there are days when the heart needs to hold paper to believe itself. I slid each into a sleeve and wrote captions you can read in a courtroom without coughing. I dressed in a blouse that didn't hide me and tied my hair back like my mother did on days she planned to lift something heavier than it looked. By mid-morning, the folder had weight, and so did I. The video sat where it belonged, silent and obedient, ready if it was required and harmless if it wasn't. I closed the fireproof box and the desk drawer, and the part of me that once thought we were safe because we meant well. Meaning well is a lovely porch. Truth is the lock. I breathed once, twice, 3 times, and the breath didn't hitch. The world outside had the nerve to be beautiful. I let it be. Then I opened a clean page and wrote the next sentence I could live by. We move with care. And we move. I thought planning would feel like rage with a calendar. It didn't. It felt like sweeping a floor you care about, one careful stroke after another until the room is ready for whatever must happen there. I started with the record. I printed only what needed paper and kept the rest on 2 small drives that clicked into my palm like coins. I labeled folders the way nurses label vials, dates, places, faces, hotel, balcony, transactions. A thin line between what I knew and what I refused to guess. Paper is a quiet ally. It never raises its voice. It simply waits to be opened. I called a locksmith, not because I was afraid of the night, but because doors should answer to the person who pays the light bill. New deadbolt. New habit. Lock it with intention. Hear the clean. I made a list titled What I Control and wrote down small things, passwords changed, statements going to my email, a second key stored with a woman who knows the weight of secrets and doesn't drop them. I booked a counseling appointment for the following week. Pride suggested I was fine. Wisdom reminded me I was not the kind of tree that survives storms by pretending the wind is a rumor. I put the date on the fridge. When my eye caught it, I felt steadier. Help on the calendar is help already walking toward you. I walked the block at hours I'd never bothered to notice. 5 o'clock. A mail carrier who hums. 6. Mrs. Patel with her hose and the small rainbow it makes. 7. The teen next door practicing layups against the garage until the ball learns the rim. Not because I wanted an audience, because light and ordinary life make truth less lonely. I wanted the day I chose to be the kind of day the world could see and survive. My son called about nothing and everything, the kind of call adult children make when they're between shifts and too tired to notice their own sentences. I didn't tell him. I listened. When he laughed at something small, I felt my ribs relax around it. After we hung up, I texted him a recipe for the stew he loves and asked if he could stop by tomorrow if the rig's not running you ragged. He sent a thumbs up and a heart. I put my phone face down and let the icons be enough. In the bathroom, I opened the drawer we never share and looked at the small betrayals that come packaged like kindness. Anything. Not yet. I stood there long enough to feel the urge to act run its course, the way waves spend themselves on shore. There are things that take 1 second to change and months to live with. The second is not the important part. The living is. I bought gloves and a few ordinary items no one would remember selling me. I placed them in a paper bag under the sink and wrote "not" on the top. That was for me. Not for him, for the part of me that likes to sprint when the road is clearly built for walking. I scrubbed the kitchen until it smelled like lemon and decision. On the counter, I set a legal pad and drew a line from left to right. On it I marked where I'd been. Sent, receipt, email, photos, video. Under it I wrote the rules I would keep when the day bent toward noise. No yelling, no name-calling, no news delivered to my son in a way that would drown him. Evidence before emotion, dignity before drama. The investigator called with a question about next steps, his voice careful around the edges. I thanked him and told him his work was done. "I'll handle the rest," I said, and I heard in my own words a tone I hadn't used in years. Not hardness, authority, the sound you make when you remember the house answers to you. Evening came dressed in gold and then in gray. He texted that he was late. The car ate time. The meeting went long. I didn't argue with his story. I set out one plate and then put it back. I ate standing at the counter like a woman between chapters. When he walked in at last, he carried a different air with him, the scent that doesn't live here, the grin that hopes it is a mirror. I asked if he'd eaten. He said he had. I nodded. Not because I believed him, but because belief is not the only thing a nod can mean. After his shower, I heard drawers, a cupboard, the soft choreography of a man making sure his props are in place. I lay in bed and let the sounds be what they were. Preparation for life he can't say out loud. When the house stilled, I slept the sleep of people who have work to do in the morning. At dawn I brewed coffee and stood at the window while the violets practiced being alive. On the pad, I wrote the day's small itinerary. Call Attorney Hale to ask neutral questions with no commitments. Set the porch light to warm. Place the folder where my hand will find it without hinting. Move the fire extinguisher to a place my eyes will reach first if they need to. Not because I expected chaos, but because order is a spell you cast in advance. I checked batteries in the alarms and replaced the one that chirped last week. I opened windows an inch. I propped the back door with a wedge the color of brick. I listened to my own breath. Slow, useful, ready. I chose a blouse that doesn't apologize and pinned back my hair in the way my mother did when she meant business. I looked at myself and saw the woman I had been before years blurred the outline of my backbone. She hadn't gone anywhere. She had been waiting for me to call her. Before noon, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote one more sentence on a card I taped inside the fireproof box. We move with care. And we move. Then I slid the ring of spare keys into my pocket, texted my son that Stu was on at 6 if the universe allowed, and turned off the television so the house could hear me think. There was nothing dramatic to see from the sidewalk. That was on purpose. Drama is a match. It burns quick and leaves you in the dark faster than you remember. I wanted lamps. I wanted a table ready for truth. I wanted to be able to say later, with my whole chest, that I acted, not reacted. That what followed was not an accident but a decision. That when the moment arrived and looked me in the face, it found me standing up. By late afternoon the rooms were set the way a stage is set before the orchestra tunes. Quiet, purposeful, familiar to the ones who know where to look. I opened the back gate so the hinges wouldn't complain. I set the kettle on the back burner and made sure the pot I'd need was clean, dry. Waiting. The house wasn't my enemy. It was my accomplice in clarity. When the sun slid lower, I wrote to myself one last time. Do not explain what does not deserve explanation. Present what is. Let the day do the rest. I slipped the card into my pocket and felt its small, solid edge against my palm. Tomorrow would be the day. Not for spectacle. For sight. The kind of seeing that changes how a story tells itself from then on. I turned off the kitchen light and watched a room hold its shape in the soft glow from the window. The plan was ready. So was I. I chose the morning because mornings don't lie. Light comes in honest. Shows you what's on the counter, what's in your hands, what kind of woman you are when no one is watching. I laid the rules out one more time. No yelling, no guessing, dignity first, and put the folder where my fingers could find it without looking. Gloves, not because I was afraid, but because care is part of the point. I opened the drawer we never share and stared at the small, ordinary object that had turned into a messenger. I lifted it out the way you lift a baby bird, sure and gentle, and slipped it into a bag marked evidence. Then I set its twin in its place. I didn't bless the act with speeches. I didn't curse the air. I closed the drawer softly, the way librarians do. Nothing criminal, nothing cruel. Clarity prepared. I washed my hands longer than necessary and stood at the sink while the violets soaked up a square of sun. The house felt like a stage before the curtain, not ominous, just ready. I checked what I had already set in motion. Keys separated, copies made, the quiet army of paper standing at attention. On the legal pad I wrote today's date, underlined it once, and wrote next to it, "We don't push, we let them step." Midday, I invited my "Your shift's kind," I texted. He sent back a photo of his boots and a thumbs up, and the picture steadied me more than any paragraph ever could. I made sure the porch light was working and the front walk was clear. I wanted a day that could be seen, ordinary enough to be believed, bright enough to tell the truth without me raising my voice. I walked the block once, not to take the neighborhood's pulse, but to sync mine with it. The mail carrier whistled. Mrs. Patel aimed the hose at a patch of stubborn soil and coaxed a rainbow from plain water. The teen next door missed 3 shots and nailed the 4th. He whooped and looked around to see who had heard. Life was doing what life does when it isn't studying you. Good. Let it. Back home I placed the original item, the one I'd removed, into the fireproof box, labeled and dated, so later no one would have to take my word for anything. I breathed in and out until my breath belonged to me again. I placed a clean towel on the counter, a small mercy for the version of me who might need something gentle to touch. Afternoon thinned into gold. He texted, "Running late. Lies don't tire. They yawn." I set 2 bowls on the and then stacked them again. Stick and wait. Truth doesn't mind room temperature. There's a part people never talk about, the waiting between decision and consequence. It's not dramatic. It's domestic. You wipe the counter. You put a spoon where spoons go. You listen to the refrigerator hum. You exist, plain and present, so that when the door opens and the moment walks in onto feet, it finds you solid. That was my work. I did it. I opened the window an inch to let the house breathe and set a glass of water in each room, an old habit for hot days and hard conversations. I moved the extinguisher to where my eye would fall on it first, not because I expected to need it, but because preparedness is how you tell your nerves you're in charge. I checked the alarms, heard the hopeful little chirp that means yes, I'm awake, and smiled at the ceiling for no reason except that it was there. He came home with a smile that tried too hard and a story that didn't try at all. I didn't test it. I set stew in front of him and watched him not eat it. "Long day?" I asked. "Longest," he said. We played our parts without applause. After dinner he disappeared to the room with the we never share. I didn't follow. I rinsed the bowls and set them to dry. I looked at the clock. I listened. A door. Footsteps. A pause. A breath held the way a child holds it before jumping into water. I could feel the house listening with me, wooden bones remembering the weight of every ordinary night and noticing this one wasn't quite that. I turned to the stove and set a clean pot where a clean pot should sit. I didn't do anything reckless. I simply prepared the kitchen to look like kitchens look when evenings are alive, nothing more. Then I stepped outside to check the porch light with a hand that didn't shake. The bulb warmed quickly and held steady. When I came back in, my phone lit. "My son, if the universe cooperates, I'm 10 minutes away." I sent back a heart and tucked the device into my apron pocket. I checked the hallway and opened the front door just long enough to let the air change its mind. The quiet had the feeling of a held note. He called my name from the other room, not in pain, not yet, more like surprise pretending to be command. I didn't go. A second call, quicker, then silence, then shuffling. I kept my eyes on the clock. I was not going to be one to step into their scene. I had set a table for the truth. If it was hungry, it knew where to sit. Minutes turned long. Somewhere in the house, a drawer slid shut with more force than sense. A muffled curse. A door tried to open and thought better of it. The ordinary sounds of someone discovering that gravity still works. I picked up a towel, folded it, unfolded it, found the crease I wanted, folded it again. People imagine vengeance is a drum. It's not. It's a metronome. You keep time until the song reveals itself. From down the block came the familiar burr of a truck that belongs to the people who arrive when the city forgets how to be safe. Not for us yet. Just a neighborhood doing what neighborhoods do. I exhaled and felt the breath come back without wobbling. The front gate clicked. Boots on the path. My son's shape in the glass. I opened the door and his arms were around me before either of us decided. "You okay, Ma?" he asked, scanning my face the way he scans a scene. "I am," I said, and it was true enough to say out loud. Behind us, the house cleared its throat, a small, unexpected sound from a place that hadn't made sounds in years. I laid on my son's sleeve and felt the muscle there, steady from work done right. "Dinner's warm," I told him, stepping back to let him in. "And there's something you need to hear. Not now, not like this, but soon," he nodded. Because duty had taught him patience, and love had taught him speed. He set his helmet on the bench by the door, the way he always does, reverent without meaning to. The light hummed. The violets kept their counsel. From the hallway, a single, sharp syllable split the air, fear wearing the mask of anger. The house seemed to inhale. I didn't move toward it. I stood where I was supposed to stand, in my own doorway, with my son beside me and the day perfectly, terribly present. Whatever needed to reveal itself would do it without my help. And when the first alarm chirped from somewhere deep in the house and then found its full voice, I simply said, "We're here." The first chirp was a question, the second an announcement. By the third, the alarm found its full voice and the house answered with motion. My son was already moving, the way training teaches you to move before your mind catches up. Window open, switch off, eyes sweeping corners. "You smell that?" he asked. "Enough to take it seriously," I said, and stepped aside. The kitchen offered up a curl of darkening air and the kind of heat that makes metal think about telling you a story. No flames, just a warning made visible. He crossed the room, turned what needed turning, cracked the back door, set the fan to hum. Half a dozen calm actions in the time it takes most. Find a sentence. "We're good." He nodded. Voice even. "Ventilate and watch," then the sound from down the hall, one sharp syllable, followed by a hush that wasn't quiet at all. My son's head tilted. Duty reorganized his face. He moved toward the bedroom where a door, rarely closed, had been shut for long minutes and was now learning the math of a bad decision. "Dad?" he called. Not loudly, not softly, just a tone professionals use when they give you a chance to open your own door. Nothing. A shuffle. A scrape. The soft thud of a body trying to be smaller than its mistake. He tried the knob. Locked. "Sir?" "Open up," he said. And in that "sir" I heard the place where son stops and responder begins. A muffled reply, anger disguised as command, then fear disguised as anger. He looked. I didn't move. "Do what you need to do," I said. "Not permission, recognition." He set his shoulder to the frame. The wood held once, complained twice, yielded on the third. The door swung in, and air moved in a new way. The way rooms breathe when secrets run out of corners to hide in. I didn't look past him. I looked at him. His jaw tightened. A heartbeat later, the rest of him followed. Suit. Helmet back on. Voice clipped. Instructions clean. "Stay where you are," he said to whoever had finally remembered how to be quiet. To me, "Ma, give me a minute." I stepped back into the hallway and placed a palm against the wall. It was cool. It would hold. Through the open doorway came a chaos trying to organize itself, fabric pulled where it shouldn't be, a limb at the wrong angle. Two bodies negotiating distance they no longer owned. My son reached for a blanket, spread it wide, set it down like mercy. He didn't swear. He didn't ask questions that begin with why. He did the work in front of him. Make the scene safe. Make the people decent. Make the next steps clear. "Dispatch, this is Foster," he said into his radio, voice professional enough to make strangers proud. "We have a residential alarm and a medical situation. Send a unit for assessment." He listed the address he'd known since childhood as if reading it for the first time. He didn't say husband. He didn't say wife. He said patient 1, patient 2. Language is a raft. He climbed onto it. The siren arrived in the distance like a sentence finding its verb. Neighbors collected on the sidewalk the way water collects at a curb, quiet, inevitable, reflective. I stepped onto the porch and let the night put its hand on my shoulder. Mrs. Patel's eyes found mine. She didn't ask. She nodded. The way women nod when they don't need new words to prove they were there. Inside, orders and compliance, the choreography of consequence. My son kept his gaze high and his voice low. He handed off when the EMTs arrived, clipboard, vitals, the kind of summary you can give when you have decided what not to mention. One of the medics glanced at me, then at him, reading the family resemblance and choosing the respect that comes with leaving a detail unstated. They moved the two of them carefully, the sheet a line between spectacle and dignity. My son walked beside the gurney to the front door, then stopped and let the professionals pass him. On the porch, a few whispers rose and fell like startled birds. Someone said, "I didn't know." Someone else said, "Maybe we all did." The truck lights painted the trees red, then blue, then honest. As the wheels bumped down the steps, my son turned and looked at me for the first time since the door gave way. The question on his face was softer than pain and harder than denial. "Mom," he said, and the word carried a weight it had never needed to carry before. I didn't put my arms around him. I put my words in order. "Not tonight," I said. "Not in a crowd. Come back after you clock out. I'll show you what I saw, and I'll tell you only what you need." He nodded once. Big man made small, small man made big. He touched a banister, touched the edge of a bed when they're not sure what else is steady. "Are you okay?" he asked, because some questions must be asked even when the answer is complicated. "I am standing," I said, which was true and enough. He followed the gurneys to the sidewalk, said 3 quiet things to the medic, and looked past the blanket only as long as decency allowed. He turned back to me and lifted 2 fingers. "I'll return." Then the siren curled itself around the block, and the street remembered how to be a street again, neighbors dispersing, night ray buttoning its shirt. Inside, I walked the length of the hallway and touched a fresh bruise on the doorframe where his shoulder had made a truth-shaped hole. I righted a chair, picked up a picture that had leaned too far, and set a glass of water on the dresser as if thirst had anything to do with what had happened here. The house took a long breath and let it go. In the kitchen, the last of the smoke had thinned into nothing. The fan still hummed because it had been told to. I turned it off. The quiet was not forgiveness. It was accuracy. I wiped the counter and found my hands were steady. The violets on the sill had turned their faces to where the light would be in the morning. Flowers don't pretend. They pivot. After the trucks left, a neighbor lingered at the gate. "Do you need anything?" she asked. "Sugar? A ride? A story that isn't yours?" I shook my head and thanked her with the kind of thanks that says your being here was a use, even if your hands were empty. She understood. Good neighborhood speak fluent. Human. When the door closed and the locks answered to me again, I opened the fireproof box and added a single sheet to the front. Tonight's date, the time the alarm began, the time the door opened, the time the wheels hit the top stair. Not because I plan to show anyone tomorrow. Because paper is a witness that costs nothing to feed and never sleeps on the job. I made tea and didn't drink it. I sat in my husband's chair and didn't sink. I thought of my son in the back of the rig, helmet resting on his knee, the new math working itself through his chest. Man, husband, son, responder, 4 corners on a map that would need new roads before morning. When I finally turned off the lights, I didn't check the hallway twice. The house was not my enemy. It had done what I asked of it. Be visible, be ordinary, be brave enough to hold the truth without shattering. At the window, the street lamp made a small circle on the pavement. I stood inside it and promised myself one more thing. When he comes back, I will not tell the story like a fire. I will tell it like a ledger, line by line, true enough to stand on. Somewhere out there a siren finished its sentence. Somewhere inside me fewer lies in it. I slept the kind of sleep that isn't kind or cruel, just ready. The street remembered how to be a street, but the night didn't forget. After the trucks were gone and the neighbor's curtain settled, I walked the hallway once more and wrote the last times in my log: alarm, door, wheels, quiet. Paper doesn't sleep. It just lies there, ready. I rinsed 2 bowls that hadn't fed anyone and set them upside down as if usefulness could drip back into them. The fan clicked off. The house exhaled. I touched a bruise on the doorframe my son's shoulder had made and thought, some marks are just a truth telling you where it entered. He came back near midnight, out of uniform, eyes older by a year. He stood in the doorway and waited until I nodded, then crossed the threshold with the care of a man who knows you can break a room by walking into it wrong. I put the kettle on and the good cups out, the ones that make plain water feel like help. "Now?" he asked. "Now," I said. I didn't begin with adjectives. I began with dates. Receipt from the hotel bar, the first breadcrumb, the email subject line I wasn't meant to see, the unfamiliar scent that outlived the laundry, photographs labeled and sleeved, lobby, elevator, arrival, exit. I slid them across the table the way nurses slide forms, steady, clean, No apology for the seriousness. He didn't touch the pictures right away. He looked at my hands first, then at my face, measuring whether I could survive his seeing. When he finally lifted the first sheet, it made a small sound, the kind good paper makes when it is asked to carry weight. He studied the thumbnails like a man reading Smoke for Wind. When he reached her profile turning toward the camera, his jaw ticked once. No curse, no theater, just the sound of a long paragraph ending without a period. How long? He asked. I can prove a month, I said. It may be longer. He nodded like a medic taking vitals. And the video? It exists, I said. You don't have to watch it to know what it says. I tapped the sleeve. The still frames are enough for choices that matter. He kept his eyes on the page and spoke to the table. Thank you for not making me learn this on the sidewalk. I wanted you to have a chair, I said. Truth sits better when there's a chair. He looked up then, and the boy he had been showed through the man's face for a heartbeat, the one who pressed his nose to our window waiting for the ice cream truck, the one who called me from the firehouse the first time a call went bad. I should have seen it, he said quietly. No, I answered. You should have been loved properly. Seeing is a job for the injured when the healthy forget theirs. He breathed out like a person setting down a box. What do you want me to do? That's the part I won't decide for you, I said. Here are the lanes I'm keeping. I won't yell. I won't do their shame for them. I'll speak in facts. I'll take care of myself and this house. For the rest, we can talk options with a lawyer in the morning. He nodded again. Something like relief, passing through the wreckage. I'll need copies, he said. Practical, returning like an old friend. They're made, I told him, and laid a drive on the table. Label on the outside matches the order inside. If you add anything, date it. Paper likes a spine. We sat with the folder between us and drank water we didn't taste. He said, at the rig I kept hearing the blanket snap in the breeze. And then he didn't say anything else for a while. The house held the silence without making it heavy. I'm not going to the hospital tonight, he decided finally. Nobody hears well under those lights. In the morning I'll speak to her, not as a hero and not as a victim, just as the man married to the woman in these photographs. Then I'll call a lawyer. And your father? I asked. He looked toward the hallway where the door hung a little hungrier on its hinges. He can wait his turn to be ordinary. I showed him the capacity I'd built into the day, the fireproof box, the second key, the list titled What I Control. I'm not staging a war, I said. I'm staging a conversation that can't be denied. He reached for my hand and didn't grip it like it might run. He simply rested his palm over mine, warm, a roof in miniature. Thank you for choosing a ledger over a match, he said. You could have burned the whole street down. Matches are loud and lazy, I said. Ledgers are work. Work holds. We set a cot in his old room even though he wouldn't sleep. Before he closed the door, he turned back. You okay if I come back to the table at 4? I doubt my brain. We'll wait till morning. I'll be here, I said. The violets will keep me company. He smiled with half his mouth, his father's half, the part that hadn't learned this new math, and left the door cracked. At 4 he returned like a tide returns. Not a surprise. Just the ocean doing what it promised. We didn't add new pages. We rehearsed sentences. I saw. I know. This is the date. This is. He practiced them out loud until the words stopped trembling and started balancing. The sky went from graphite to ash to the kind of gray you can breathe. He showered, dressed, clipped his badge to a belt loop because duty is muscle memory. At the door he kissed my hair the way he did when he was small and believed in talismans. I'll come back after, he said. I'll be here, I said again, and it felt like a vow to something bigger than the day. When he left, I called Victoria Hale and said, it's time for advice shaped like paper. She answered like people answer when they've been expecting your voice. We spoke about options, timelines, what not to say, what not to sign. Bring what you have, she said. We'll let the facts that fits. I made coffee and set 2 cups, though I'd drink only 1. The violets turned toward the sliver of light like there had never been smoke. Flowers don't hold grudges. They hold angles. I opened the box and checked the order one more time. Receipt, email, photos, log. I added last night's times to the front and closed the lid with the small satisfaction of things aligning. My son texted. In the family room. 5 minutes. Hospitals build those rooms for storms. I took a breath, picked up the folder, and put on a sweater that didn't apologize for my shoulders. On the way out I flipped the porch light off. They had it from here. I locked the door, heard the clean metal on metal answer, and said to the house what I had promised my son. We'll tell it like a ledger, line by line. True enough to stand. Then I walked toward a building where truth doesn't whisper because fluorescence won't let it, ready to put the pages on a table that wasn't mine and let them do their quiet work. Hospitals don't keep secrets. They keep records. The family room had the color of oatmeal and the sound of vending machines earning their keep. I took the chair that faced the hallway and set the folder on the table the way you said bread to rice covered, patient, inevitable. My son arrived first, out of uniform, a clean shirt thrown over a night that hadn't slept. He sat. We didn't hug. We did the thing that holds better. We looked at each other long enough to remember who we were before this morning tried to rename us. She's down the hall, he said. He's 2 floors up. No names. Not avoidance taxonomy. He had learned at work that labels help the world stay on its hinges when people don't. Do you want me there? I asked. I want you steady, he said. You've already done the hardest part. He went to speak to his wife first. I didn't follow. Fluorescence isn't kind to truth, but it won't let it hide either. I watched the clock hands honest work, listened to the nurse at the desk ask a man for his date of birth, and thought about how bodies are always asked to prove themselves even when hearts are busy breaking. He came back 20 minutes older. He didn't sit right away. He poured water and didn't drink it. I told her what I saw, he said. The dates. The times. I didn't ask why. Why is a trap when the answer is already in the picture? And what did she say? My voice surprised me how calm it was, like a lake that knows wind but refuses to copy it. She asked if we could fix it, he said. I told her I will fix me. I will fix what this did to my backbone and my sleep. I won't fix what she broke. That's hers. He sat then. Not slumped arrived. I asked for her ring, he added quietly, not as punctuation. He opened his palm. A bend that used to mean one thing lay there learning a different language. He closed his fingers again before the metal could get cold. Do you want to see your father? I asked. I'll speak to the doctor first. Then I'll tell him what I told her. Same words, same spine. He glanced at the folder. Can I borrow strength? I slid the drive to. Label matches the order. If you add anything, date it. Paper likes to stand on its own feet. A physician came tired eyes. Practice kindness. He used neutral phrases that do a lot of work. Adhesive injury, superficial trauma, expected discomfort. Follow up. He never said glue. Hospitals don't editorialize. They stabilize. Can he be discharged without drama? My son asked. With instructions, the doctor said, and a signature. He looked at me then. Not nosy, just thorough. Do you have support at home? I do, I said. It was both answer and blessing. My son went to the elevator. I stayed. A chaplain knocked and offered me a peppermint and a prayer. I took both. The room didn't become holy, but it remembered how. From the hallway came the rattle of a hush of people making space for it. I opened the folder and added one line to the front page. Hospital spoke to her first. Stood. No shouting. Not for court. For the woman I'd be tomorrow who might need to know how today was done. When my son came back from seeing his father, his face held the softness that follows decision. I told him the same thing, he said. No performance. No rescue. I know. I'm done pretending not to. Did he argue? I asked. He tried to outsource regret, my son said. I didn't pick it up. We made a list. Right there on the back of a discharge envelope. Lawyer at 10. Spare clothes from the house, mine, not his. A call to the union rep. A meeting with a counselor who knows that firefighters carry more than hoses. We did. Venge. We wrote repair and let it be bigger than punishment. His phone buzzed a text from a coworker who had seen too much street for one lifetime and knew when to send a single word. Here. My son replied with the same word. Men build bridges that way, one plank of plain speech at a time. Before we left, I walked to the nurse's station and said thank you like I meant it, which I did. Bureaucracy isn't beautiful, but the people inside it can be. On a bulletin board, someone had pinned a photo of a sunset shaped like a promise. Below it, in a handwriting that had looked tired and learned better, someone had written, "You did not cause this. You do not have to carry it alone." In the parking lot, morning had finally convinced the sky to be day. We stood by his car and did what you do when the map redraws itself beneath your shoes. We looked where we were and put a finger on "you are here." Do you want me at the apartment? I asked. He shook his head. I'll pack a bag. Come to you tonight. We'll eat something that tastes like a decision made. Stew reheats well, I said, and it almost sounded like a joke. It wasn't. It was a plan with a spoon. At home, I called Victoria Hale and told her we were ready for the kind of help that arrives wearing a suit and carrying a pen. She walked me through edges I shouldn't cut my hands on: what to sign, what to file, what to ignore. "You've done the right work," she said. "Now let the paper do some of it for you." I placed the hospital note at the front of the box. I put the ring in my small dish and set it beside the window where the violets could see it learn. I made the bed in the spare room with clean sheets that smelled like sun. I boiled water and forgot to pour it. Then I poured it and forgot to drink. Then I laughed at myself, which helped more than I expected. By late afternoon, my son texted a single sentence: "Bag packed. Keys left on the counter." No drama, just a Wi-Fi password. Because sometimes love is a string of letters and numbers that lets you be held by a signal you can't see. Evening came back in its right clothes. I set 2 bowls on the table and lit a small candle, not because we needed mood, but because flame behaved better in a place where it had permission. The house looked at me with its steady, wooden face and seemed to say what it had been saying all along: "I am not your enemy. I am a room that can hold the truth." I wrote one last line for the day. We chose the ledger over the match. We will keep choosing it. Then I put the pen down and let quiet be the answer to every question that didn't deserve more. Outside, the neighborhood practiced ordinary again: dogs deciding, a bicycle bell, a screen door being loved open and loved shut. Inside, we waited for the knock that meant we were not alone in the choosing. Morning came honest and unremarkable, the way I had prayed it would. I made coffee, set 2 bowls for stew I'd finally eat, and opened the window so the house could trade night for air. The folder sat where it always sat now, on its chair, spine straight, waiting to be useful. Paper had carried us this far. Today it would simply ride along. My son arrived with a face that had practiced not collapsing. He put his bag by the door and his keys in the dish we keep for things that should have a place. He didn't tell me what words they used in the family room, or what tone his father chose on the discharge line. He didn't need to. There is a way a day sounds when a sentence ends with a period and not a question. That sound was in the room. We ate without ceremony. He broke a piece of bread, steam lifting in a small ghost, and said, "Lawyer at 10, union rep at noon, counselor after shift change." He wasn't reciting to impress me. He was laying tracks so the train would have somewhere to go. I called Victoria and said we were ready for signatures that meant something. She met us in an office that smelled like wool and ink. No speeches, just forms and pens and the soft thunder of lives changing in paragraphs. I filed what needed filing, not with fireworks but with the dignity of showing up. He started his own stack, steady as a medic setting in 4 separate counsel, temporary orders, a request for quiet so the decision could grow sturdy. There was no scene in a parking lot, no shouting on the phone, no late-night drive-by for a suitcase and a monologue. My son texted one sentence to the apartment he had left: "I know. I am safe. Don't call." He left the ring on the dresser and took what was his. He did not take explanations. Those belonged to someone else. I drove him back to my house, the long way, past the river where the city remembers it started as a place water could love. We didn't talk. Silence can be a bridge when it's built right. The first week we learned new choreography. He slept in his old room with the door cracked, the way he used to when he was 12 and storms were a hobby. He woke before dawn and ran until the street believed him. I baked bread that didn't know what day it was and reopened my kitchen like I had years ago. Coffee in a carafe, 3 pies, a sign that said open when I remembered to flip it. Neighbors drifted in, not with questions, but with coins and kindness and stories that made space for mine without crowding it. Someone brought lilacs that smelled like a new chapter. Someone else fixed a stubborn hinge that had been asking for help so quietly I'd stopped hearing it. At night, when the house settled, I added thin lines to the log, filed this, served that, spoke to Victoria, ate, slept, woke, breathed. The entries looked small. That's how you know they're right. Big moves leave scorch marks. Correct ones leave tracks. On the 3rd evening, I found my son at the table with the folder open, not to re-injure himself, but to practice the sentences he would keep. I saw. I know. Here is the date. Here is what I choose. He didn't rehearse anger. He rehearsed clarity. Clarity doesn't take your voice. It tunes it. News traveled like news does, half sprint, half crawl. A woman from church hugged me as if touch were a language older than gossip. The pharmacist slipped an extra roll of labels into my bag and said, "On the house," and we both laughed at the phrase because look where the house had brought us. Mrs. Patel pressed a Tupperware of lentils into my hands with instructions that could have doubled as scripture. Eat all week. Add water when it thickens. That's how to keep good things going. My husband, strange how quickly the word tilted, sent a letter that tried to outsource regret. I didn't answer. Victoria did, with the kind of prose makes courts feel like chairs with backs. Polite, concise, heavy enough to stay put in a breeze. He called once from a number I didn't know. I let the ring count itself to the end. We were past a portion of the program where performance deserved applause. On the 7th day, I put the folder in the fireproof box and left it there on purpose. I needed my hands for other work. The violets offered 5 small blooms, as if they'd been waiting to be asked. I wiped down the counter, rolled out cinnamon dough, and posted a photo that said nothing about court or marriage or betrayal. It said fresh rolls in the address. By lunchtime, the porch was a sequence of footsteps and thank yous. People paying with cash, with stories, with a look you only give when you're glad someone. My son came home with a counselor's card in his pocket and a grocery bag on his arm. He set both on the table, equal in their own way. "I'm not a hero in this," he said. "I'm a man who will be okay." I believed him not because of the words, but because of the way he set them down flat, side by side, like tools you reach for because you trust them. We sat on the steps that evening with bowls warm in our hands while the street practiced ordinary. A dog deciding between destinations, teenagers bragging to the air, a bicycle bell trying out its voice. I told him a story about the first day I opened the bakery years ago. How a stranger had cried over an apricot tart because it tasted like the last summer before everything changed. He smiled. "That belongs to the future. People need places to bring their hunger," he said. "For food. For truth. You built one. Both of us did," I said. And we had, without liking the reason. Papers continued their slow, correct march, acknowledgments, notices, stamped copies returning like homing birds. Nothing dramatic. Drama was a match. We'd chosen lamps. One afternoon, the mail held a note from the judge. Victoria had sent him something crisp and complete. He sent back a scheduling order and a line that wasn't personal but felt like it. "The court appreciates the parties' measured conduct." I placed it behind the first sheet in the box and closed the lid over the sound of my own relief. When the apartment lease ended, my son didn't ask me what to do with the furniture. He sold what didn't fit and gave away what did. He kept a chair, a lamp, a set of plates that had learned its lesson about fragility. He moved them into a small place up the street where morning comes through a window like an apology that knows it won't be accepted but shows up anyway. He didn't make a speech about independence. He made dinner on a Thursday and fed me on a couch that didn't remember anyone. As for her, I didn't rehearse punishments in my head. I rehearsed boundaries. She wrote once a message that asked forgiveness to do too much work. I wished her care, sent nothing, and kept the door between us shut with kindness on my side. Forgiveness is a room. You don't put a couch in it for people who won't sit right. The day the decree came, it arrived on ordinary paper in an ordinary envelope with extraordinary weight. I held it, read it, filed it, and then I did something no one sees in the movies. I put on an apron and swept the floor. You cannot eat certificates. You can stand on what they mean and cook anyway. Neighbors still come by in a trickle that feels like a blessing learned to walk. Sometimes I tell the short version. We kept a ledger. We lit lamps. The truth sat down. Sometimes I say nothing, and they say nothing back. And both are right. The porch light goes on at dusk out of habit, not fear. The violets keep their schedule. Bread rises. So do I. On a Sunday that smelled like rain miles away, my son knocked and didn't wait for me to call out, "Come in." He held up a set of small silver keys and grinned like a boy who finally learned his own strength. "Spare for the new place," he said. "And for whenever a stew decides to happen." We ate at that night stew that tasted like a decision kept, and afterward we carried 2 plates to the sink and washed them the way people do who weren't erased. He dried while I scrubbed. Then he scrubbed while I dried. When we were done, the kitchen looked like a place that could hold any story and be a kitchen. Before bed, I opened the box one last time. I didn't add a line. I didn't need to. The record had become a floor, and I was standing on it. I closed the lid, set the folder on its chair, and turned off the lamp. The house breathed the way houses do when they've learned where the truth goes and where it doesn't. I went to the window and watched the street be itself. No sirens. Just a bicycle bell, just a neighbor waving, just evening deciding to keep its promises. We chose the ledger, I said into the glass. We kept choosing it, My breath fogged a small circle, then cleared. A porch light blinked on 2 doors down. Mine stayed steady. In the morning, I would mix flour and water and salt, and something would rise that hadn't asked for permission. That's how you keep good things going. You add water when they thicken. You feed what feeds you back. And when truth knocks quiet, regular, right on time, you open the door and say, "We're here."